Hi, my name is Penny Lane Shouse. I am 45 years old. I live in Port Orford, Oregon. This is my statement concerning the matter of State of Oregon versus Penny Lane Shouse in regards to the theft of a $5,000 motorized bicycle. There will be there will be corroboration of everything I iterate here. I am utilizing correspondence via screenshots, texts, emails, photos, and Facebook Messenger excerpts. Please also note I will speak quickly and as succinctly as possible. There's possibly going to be some stuttering. Please bear with me. These emails do not show me putting my best foot forward, as many are argumentative. And there are also expletives, and my typos are not to be forgiven, but they are what they are. I'll do my best to explain. The second half of this is really intense, and it's slightly laborious to read, but it's pertinent evidence. I must lay a little backstory down in order to show the operation of my mind and my reasoning. As again, I say, I'm going to speak as quickly as possible. Hindsight's 20/20. I wish now I had done things differently and been more mindful. I'd like to draw attention to anyone watching this, to the players in this awful scenario. When you guys are reading this, and I say you guys because I'm saying this to my lawyer and law enforcement and whomever I deem fit, when reading these emails and etc., please note the dates and the people involved, and they will be denoted as separate people by the following. The headings that have discombobulated email consisting of like numbers and letters. If not, PennyLane74 Gmail, which is also me, that will be me as well. I had an email program that would generate new email addresses each time because the two players, besides myself in this horrible debacle, they would often pose as each other, as you will see through the evidence, as others state the same. So I wasn't certain who was blocking me, who was not. So I would go around the blocking if the girlfriend or the supposed girlfriend would be blocking me instead of Mr. Myers himself. Also, anytime you see an email with the email address lgmlam12gmail.com, or most likely any phone number with a 373 number, or the name Christopher Kyle or Chris Myers, this refers to the co-defendant, Christopher Kyle Myers from Port Orford. When you see the phone number in the top of the texts, 541-808-7534, and emails to and from myself, or the name with Facebook Messengers, Mandy Marie, or simply Mandy, that's referring to a woman who also is a constant companion to Christopher Kyle Myers, and former friend of mine. These are the major players in this unfortunate situation. There's a lot of information and a lot of childish drama leading up to this very serious situation. Please pause the video at any time to read the screenshots when interested, as I try to correlate these to my speech. Thank you, and I shall begin. Chris Myers and I, Penny Lane Shouse, have known each other for a year and have been involved in an intimate relationship for that year, other than 3 months, the times between January 21st and the early part of May. Chris Myers also spends time with many other women, but has a consistent companion that lives in Port Orford as well, named Mandy. Mandy and I were friends for quite a while previously, but as of October 2019, no longer. This very unbecoming correspondence you will be able to be privy to. It will confirm this, and very often Chris, Mandy, and I would have a bit of a argument triangle going on, full of drama and unfortunate things, and the he said, she said, they did this, or whatever, which is probably par for the course when more than two are involved in any relationship of some kind. First week of August, I received an email from Chris Myers stating that he and his son Logan, around age 8 or 9, I'm not sure, maybe even younger, were walking because they got kicked out of Mandy's home after an argument. Chris requested I pick them both up. Chris was dragging his belongings behind him, and his son was cold. It was about 10:30 at night. Logan needed to be back at Chris's parents' home, as that is where Logan lives, and they have custody of him at this time. I said yes, I picked them up. I took Logan home, took Chris to grab more of his belongings, which he put into my van, and then drove to my house, where he grabbed just a couple things out of the van and came inside, where we discussed his situation. He asked if he could spend the night and if he could leave some of his things there until he could find another place to put them, as he was worried they would be destroyed, as they had been previously when left out in the open or stolen or destroyed by Mandy? I said yes. Oftentimes, this would only be a few days situation in his life, and I didn't see there being a problem, so I helped out. I couldn't lock my van because there was a previous assault on my vehicle. My windows were busted out, and I could not lock his belongings in there or protect them. I could only make it as far as the garage with a couple of his items. The rest I put in my home. But there were two things, his amplifier and a few bags of clothing I put in his garage. I told Chris that's where I put them. The next day he came back and, excuse me, picked up a couple of things, his electric guitar and a few bags of his things, and said that it would just be a little bit more. So a few days turned into a few weeks, during which there were very acrimonious conversations between Mandy, myself, and Chris. Mandy and myself. Chris was very silent and in the background, and only contacted me in short bursts very spontaneously when Mandy was sleeping. It was like he was on his best behavior, at least that's what I thought. The very beginning of August, August 10th, I received 2 disturbing texts from Mandy stating that she and Chris were coming to get his stuff, the remaining belongings, and how would my landlord and employer DM the old man like some drama at his house. I clapped back at her, and I ignored her the rest of the evening, but then she contacted me again. I then contacted her mother. We'll call her B. BB. We'll call her BB. Her mother, BB, expressed that she would do her best to speak with Mandy, but they had very different views on things, and I expressed my displeasure at bothering her and her family with this trivial matter. But I was starting to worry because things were getting out of hand. They were escalating on both fronts. I certainly know that my blood pressure was rising. I regret I was not more mindful of how my responses to others or assistance to others in some areas may impact my landlord and employer, DM. I simply did not believe that any repercussions were worth warranting something of this magnitude, and that this would all be settled soon, as it always had been the past year, as with other arguments between the three of us. 3 nights later, the cell towers or the internet services, what have you, went down. It was a very quiet night. The next morning, I woke to my landlord and employer DM asking downstairs to me if I knew where his bike was and did I move it. He had just weeks before, perhaps 2 weeks before, bought a brand new $5,000 electronic bike, and he was enjoying it very much. He was keeping it in the garage. I shouted I didn't know where it was, and I hadn't been out there to weed eat like I thought I was going to the previous day, so I didn't even go into the garage. I asked him when the last time he personally saw it. He stated the last time he'd seen it and rode it was the previous day at 5:30 p.m. That was the 13th of August. He then closed the garage until this morning. He immediately got nervous and said that this was my fault. I was taken aback, but then I immediately thought of Mandy, and maybe even Chris. But initially, I thought of Mandy and another person with the initials CA. Very few people knew where I lived, but recently I'd been in the hospital. I was ill, 3 days from death, no lie, with sepsis, E. coli blood poisoning, and kidney renal failure. Also, during that time, just before I went in the hospital, I dislocated my knee. There is a large hill, which prompted Mr. M, we'll call him, my landlord, to get this electronic bike because it was a very steep hill and it was difficult to get up. So I would pay people to take me to and from work. And one of these people was CA and his girlfriend CT, as they lived just a hop, skip, and a jump down the block from me. Anyway, I'd also hired on behalf of my landlord and employer, Mr. M, a female with the initials BR and a gentleman with the initials CG to seal a deck. They had previously did some work on the toilet and did some moving in the home, and it was performed satisfactory. I was looking forward to being project manager and handling this, as I handled many things for Mr. M throughout his day as far as maintenance issues, etc., in addition to dietary needs and the household upkeep. I told Mr. M I would tell him whoever I knew where I would tell him the names of whoever knew where I lived, which was a handful. I asked him for some of my pay as I was going to go put some gas in my car, and run around to the bike shop, to a couple businesses like Katie King Van Wormer and D Finch and those at Circle K. Any business that had an influx of multiple people that possibly could have an ear and an eye out, I was going to visit. I also sent quick texts to every and all people that I knew that had access to my home and knowledge of where I lived, to let them know, be aware, you will be questioned. These are not accusations. Please cooperate, as there's been a theft at my home of my landlord's, and this was very important. The investigation would probably be imminent. Mr. M asked me, should I call the police? I said, absolutely, right now. I got ready to leave. While texting to others and putting a post in Facebook regarding the theft, I noticed I had an email from Chris Myers saying from the day before about how sorry about what Mandy had been putting on Facebook about calling me a stalker, and then the arguing back and forth, and he was sorry for the things he said to Mandy about me. He just wanted to shut her up because they were in a fight. He wanted to get sober. He was going to probably move to Coos Bay because until he gets away from Mandy, he's not going to be successful, and that he doesn't want to lose his kids, etc., etc., etc. I was very proud of him. He expressed his innocence completely. He also stated that he and Mandy both had an alibi, which was Tammy Dones and Gary Dones, apparently relations to Chris Myers. Excuse me, I lost my place. He asked me frantically to meet me. I said I had to run a few errands. I had to grease some palms, kind of talk to some homeless people, see if they'll keep their eye out. And then I would love to meet up with him, and I wanted to hear what he had to say. And then that's when he proclaimed his innocence, said his alibi again, looked me right in the face. As I stated, we'd had an intimate relationship regularly. I mean, regularly. For a year, minus 3 months. I had no reason to believe that he would mess up his ability to have a place to come to that no one knew where he was and to spend time with me. I told him I would meet him. I asked him where he was. He said he was in town. He said meet him at the skate park. All of these messages are reflected in my video evidence. I met him about an hour and a half later. I picked him up at the library. We took a drive to the 12th Street dock, where we again discussed some things. He proclaimed his innocence again. We talked about some things. We took a walk in the woods, spent some time, like 20 minutes together, taking a walk, talking about medical issues, yada, yada, yada. And as I'd recently been hospitalized and my mother had recently passed, who lives in Florida, and I couldn't get there due to COVID and my immune system, we had a lot to talk about, but it was very time pressing because I had a lot of stuff to do. After our brief interlude, I dropped him off at Circle K, and I went to Ray's to pick up Wi-Fi so I could contact my landlord, Mr. M, and ask about the progress. I received during those Wi-Fi transmissions a message from BR saying, what the hell, the cops are here and they're questioning me about a stolen bike. I just woke up, what's going on? So I drove by there. I assured her that I told Mr. M that she nor I nor CG, the other person I hired, had anything to do with this, and I believe it was a crime of opportunity. And that due to my association with certain people, unfortunately, it has come about that I perhaps made this possible. I told her I did not believe that the bicycle itself was targeted. I believe that Mandy and another person perhaps came to forcibly grab Chris's items, as we could not all compromise to a safe location for me to drop them off, as there's a gang mentality with them. And I had been previously assaulted in January, which was why there was a 3-month pause between my and Chris's relationship. I said Mandy was not welcome around me, and it was my initial opinion, which, as you will see, seems to be pretty much on point, but I won't spoil it for you till the end. It was accurate that whoever was looking for items of Chris's in the garage, as I had moved them into my home because they weren't belonging to Don and I didn't want them in his garage, it was accurate that those who went in there looking for the items were frustrated, and they then took the opportunity to grab something of value out of anger or just the pure need to thieve and keep up the hustle. I'll never know. In the couple coming weeks, many I'd spoken to were hearing dribs and drabs of information. I was even contacted by one business owner asking anonymously for someone else if there was a reward for any information on the return of the bike. I spoke to my landlord, Mr. D. He said how would $1,000 be? And I said, yeah, that's too much. How about $500? Just in case we'd actually, when I say we, because I felt we were a team. This is very difficult. I've come to think very fondly of Mr. M over 4.5 years, and I've done much to secure my place there. And I thought, anyway, excuse me. I was worried that $1,000 would be too much, but $500 would be good, just in case you're actually buying your bike back from the people that stole it. I relayed the information to the party that contacted me anonymously. 8 hours later, DM changed his mind and rescinded the reward. I contacted the party via the way she contacted me, and subsequently we removed that reward. But I don't believe that any information came forth regardless from that avenue, and the point was moot. I and a few others were very diligent lay people trying to be detectives. We all hoped, for many different reasons, that this property would be returned. First and foremost, because it was a wrong, and that it could be corrected, hopefully. And he's my landlord. And he was violated. His security was breached. And he's been suffering greatly over this, as he also suffers from anxiety anyway. Anything I could do to repair what possibly my involvement due to ridiculous and toxic drama with others, and allowing them to know where I lived that resulted in perhaps a theft from someone I respected greatly's home, that's what was necessary in my mind. And it was very bothersome, and I was very bothersome to some. Thankfully, one day it seems to have paid off. I spoke with a woman with the initial CT. After pressing pretty strongly the past 2 weeks, she seemed kind of different this time, so I pushed a little harder. You will see my evidence of these conversations and how I became privy to the location of the bike, or at least the information getting us pointing to the location of the bike. I immediately called BR and another gentleman, another person, she's a female, another gentleman, GE, and asked for their assistance. I told them I had the information, and that the person that told me this thought they were in danger by just divulging this. They were worried they were going to be set up, and this woman, CT, told me that the bike could be found possibly across the street from Paradise Point RV Park. There was some brush there with gorse and huckleberry, etc., and the last she'd known of it to be there, the last she'd known a couple days ago it was there, but it might have been moved. I drove and picked up BR and GE to head out. I was informed BR had made a quick call to Officer Perry at the Port Orford Police Department telling him we'd just received a tip, we're about to check it out. It was about 9:45. So I didn't tell Dawn because, I didn't tell Mr. M because he generally went to bed at 10 o'clock and it was 9:45. I did not want to excite him and get his hopes up, just in case this was fruitless. Officer Perry directed BR to please bring it by if we did find anything. And if he was still there, he would take it, as he would be, he would be off work until Wednesday. This was, I want to say it was a Friday. I don't know. Could have been Sunday. It was September 6th. So he would be off until the following Wednesday. After about a half an hour searching through gorse and other brambles and brush, BR noticed a rope hanging over a branch about 2.5, 3 feet in length. She said, "What's that?" And grabbed it, kind of like trying to move it from the brush. And I said, "Oh my gosh, that's from my house. There used to be a stairway down to my stairs, down to my apartment. On the railing was buoys strung up by this particular thick bluish rope. And it was a very light blue color. GE and BR went in that direction quickly, as it could possibly have been a marker for someone that had stashed something previously, I was told. I was slow going behind them, but I could still see Brandy, and she was helping me with her flashlight get through the brush. While doing so, we heard GE yell, "I think I found a bike." She and I started screaming out answers and questions, and he asked what the model was. I asked him what color it was, and as we got closer, his voice gleefully said, "Yes, we found a parted bike. The seat, the handlebars, the tires, the wheels, they were all there, but the motors and the crank and pedals and the battery were gone. It was all parted, but we grabbed up all we could. We were very excited and very prideful. We carried this out to the van. It took about 45 minutes for us to find it, but we rushed to the police station. Or, excuse me, we rushed to we rushed to BR's, where GE and BR assembled what we had of the bicycle together. BR loaded it in my van. She and I rushed to the police department. Officer Perry met us. We turned in the bike, and we had the following conversation. We were bummed it was found parted, but Officer Perry stated when talking to the victim, my landlord, DM, had stated that if the bike was returned, no charges would be filed. I asked Officer Perry if I could possibly talk to DM and convince him otherwise. Would they submit the case? He said, actually, it's out of our hands now because of the amount, monetarily, of the item that was stolen. The state was going to pick it up regardless because it was now a felony, and it was theft 1. He also stated he was recording this and that he wanted to say on record that he apologized to BR and myself for accusing us of the theft. We were both very, very proud and very pleased. Oh no. So, let's see. Okay, so BR and I were real happy. BR went home. I dropped her off. She went in and posted a victorious and gleeful victory that we found the bike. And as it was towards 2 o'clock in the morning, I was going to, of course, not wake up Mr. M, my landlord, and tell him that we got the bike. I would just wait till the next day. Oftentimes, Mr. M and my waking and going to bed times overlaps. As I work graveyard shift, I would often check in with him in the morning, see what the dietary desires for the day were, and then would go to bed around 10 a.m. and wake up probably around 3 or 4, etc., etc. I spoke to him that day and I said I had great information for him, but I wanted to do a little background check about certain things, and I would present it to him later on in the day because I was starting to get punch drunk. I was on little sleep. I had been up for a little bit longer than normal, and things were starting to get fuzzy. Let's see. I woke later, and I imparted the great news to Mr. M. I showed him the picture of the bike, and I told him what Officer Perry said, that he could possibly have his bike back, at least the remains of it, by Wednesday, September 9th. My landlord, employer, and friend for over 4.5 years was particularly overjoyed, and he stopped me to tell me that my daughter and I had a place to live free of charge for the rest of our lives, or the rest of his life. I told him I appreciate that greatly, and it was my pleasure, especially as I did feel that my mishandling of my personal matters was most possibly the reason that the violation of his security and safety and peace of mind had occurred, and I would be more mindful in the future. We then discussed getting the garage door fixed and installing personal security cameras. The next couple days, I was working on scheduling all these items to come into fruition, and I was doing that as quickly as possible. I also, unfortunately, gloated to Mandy, and I accused her, and I told her I knew exactly who stole this bike, insinuating that it was her, and that I was almost 100% positive that she knew about it or orchestrated the theft. All evidence and text from her provided to you guys all, or whoever's watching this, to all of you earlier, shows why I would possibly think that Mandy did this. The next, let's see. Many people would probably have come to the same conclusion. Why would my lover want to risk his other lover, her, to know where his other lover, lived, because I was one of the few places that he could be unmolested? So why would he want to risk his cushy place to lay his head with me now? And he's never stolen from me. And the last few times we'd seen each other, the day before even I got arrested, had been extremely pleasant, without malice. And we really, Chris and I only really argued when we argued due to Mandy and my arguments. I believed, again, that it was Mandy and a gentleman with the initials CA who did some work on my car, and also his girlfriend used to give me rides to my house, and Mandy and he just happened to be best friends. And they didn't like me very much because I gave his girlfriend information that was not very pleasing to Casey, and unfortunately, I did this on Chris's behalf. I did not make very good decisions where my heart was concerned, especially with Chris Myers. I wish I could turn back time, but I can't. September 8th, 2 days later after the finding of the bike. This is very important because when you read Chris's statements to myself and then read the ones to the cops in Jovita, this is very important. At 7:11 a.m., 2 days after I found the bike with BR and GE. We turned it in, not Chris. Remember this. He asked if we could meet up because he wanted to show me where the rest of the bicycle parts were, and he was proclaiming his innocence, and he wrote me a huge long text story stating how he came upon these bicycle parts and why it was now, he was now coming back to me to bring them and he wants me to turn them in, yada, yada, yada. I want to specify once again, I am head over heels in love with this gentleman. I hate to say it, even after he set me up. It's very difficult for me to believe that this was him. And I want to separate them, but I do know the truth. He did this to me. For what reasons, I don't know. I can't attest to the operation of someone else's mind. Anyway, I'm very disappointed, very displeased, and very hurt and angry with Mr. Chris Myers. But the time we spent 3 leisurely hours that day together in privacy, and then he took me to the place where he said he had been hiding the remains of the bicycle parts. As I left the premises to get the remaining parts, Chris was laying in the back seat. I had passed my landlord as he was coming home from Coos Bay from bowling as I was exiting to go get the rest of the parts. He had imparted to me at a great bowling day. We talked about dinner plans. I said I would go to the store, and he stated he'd stopped at the bicycle shop and told him about the recovery of most of the bike. He was inquiring about how much it would cost to make that bike whole again. I said, as a matter of fact, I am on my way to possibly retrieve those because I received another tip, but don't get his hopes up. He was excited. I then dropped Chris off where the bicycle parts were. He gave them to me in a Dollar General bag. He said, I can't go into town to pick me up back here when you get done with the store. I said, okay. I went and I ran my errands. I came back. He wasn't there. I ran back to Dollar General to get Wi-Fi, and you'll see in the evidence, he sent me 2 statements saying, I'm sorry I bounced. I can't go to jail for something I didn't do. Blah, blah, blah. You'll see that. Meanwhile, I immediately, unfortunately, when I dropped him off at the place the bike parts were stashed, I noticed there was a black belt or rope of some kind laying at the entrance of the trail that he had stashed things in. Immediately, unfortunately, I thought of the blue rope and thought perhaps that was a marker as well. But quickly I decided, it must be a common practice, as I found out it is, but only amongst thieves or the homeless that seek shelter, and not to be confused by the many turns and twists. He said he was not going to go to town, yada, yada, yada. And I said, do you promise you'll be here when I get back? He said, absolutely. He took his amplifier, and when I jokingly said, leave it there, he took off his sweatshirt and gave it to me. He said, I'll be here, I promise. After doing my errands, I came back. Myers was nowhere to be found. That's when I ran back to Dollar General. I got the information saying he wouldn't be there. I was disappointed, but I went home. I cooked dinner, everything else. And I later found out that on my way home from the errands, Mandy had texted me when I was at Dollar General, and she goes, Chris is about to get arrested. I go, no, I think I have evidence that exonerates him and you and everybody. Just don't call the police. We don't know what's going on yet. And I said, I can prove that Chris didn't do it. And she said that there was most likely going to be an arrest shortly. I was confused because Chris had said he was going to split and he was sorry that he was going to shine me and he broke his promise, but he was already picked up at Elk River. Later, I found out that wasn't kind of true. as I went directly to Mandy's house and tried to stop whatever I thought I could try. But then I went home, I cooked dinner for Dawn, and then I got called by the person that gave me the information to find the bike, told me that we had to meet up, and later that night, Tuesday night, I was being kind of strong-armed, I guess. But I digress. But we're coming down the home stretch, just a few more minutes of your patience. Having the remaining parts of the stolen bike in hand, I excitedly recovered the bike parts. And the person that contacted me, that gave me the tips, was telling me they're still fearful for their life. And in defense of the tipster, it seems she was very scared and out of character. She was giving me an ultimatum of my child's safety in the balance. Therefore, I believe she truly was scared of the repercussions for assisting me in the recovery of the bike, anonymous or not. She said I had a choice. I could either have the proof to go to CPS because she showed me a video in which my daughter was backhanded by a babysitter in Dollar General. I could either have that proof, or I could find out who really took the bike and turn them in. I said, first of all, it's too late. I already found the bike last night, or earlier, last night, and it was already turned to the police. Secondly, I can just call CPS, and she waved the phone in my hand and said, but do you have the evidence with the video on it? I said, basically, I told her to fuck off. I was obviously angry. I felt in the catch-22, in between a rock and a hard place, but please don't judge me. I stated I would still try to do both. A path for justice for a person that was violated by a burglary, and protect my child from afar, even though I had not been allowed to see her or speak to her by her father for a year. Excuse me. I told her I would not be forced to choose. She was very unsettled as I was angrily walking across the street, and if you question the Circle K employees, it was simply impossible not for them to note my distress and anger. I beat up the ice machine and I said a few expletives. The next day, I was due to work at Tasty Kate's at night. As my business, I do some commercial work, and it is graveyard. Probably around, well, not graveyard necessarily, but like midnight to like 4 or 5. But earlier when possible. And I had a migraine that day. As I said, I am ill. I am in and out of the hospital. Doesn't matter why, but I'm ill. And I don't often feel good, but I work it around, I make it work. I had a migraine, and around 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday, I was trying to sleep off this migraine in hopes of feeling better before work. I still had, as of yet, not brought the bike parts to Officer Perry, but I did know that day, which was just one day after, not even a whole 24 hours after I found the bike parts, or they were given to me by Chris, I knew that I was going to be in contact with Officer Perry, because that was the day that Mr. Matthews was supposed to gain access to his bike from the police. They had come to my door downstairs, knocked on my door. Mr. Matthews said, Mr. M said that Officer Perry was right there, and Officer Perry said hello, and I said, please don't turn on the light, because I had a migraine. It was 7:30. I said, I got to go to work tonight. Can I please catch up with you later? What time do you get off? He said, he gets off at midnight. I said, I will contact you before then. 2 hours passed. I get a text that woke me up from Mr. M upstairs stating the officer was there to speak to me. I quickly took a moment because I noticed, as I told Officer Perry, let me go to the bathroom and situate myself. I'll be right up. I went to the bathroom, and while I was in the bathroom, I saw a text from Brandy's mother. Not Brandy, pardon me. Mandy Burkhouse's mother, B. I call her BB. And I responded to her. I said, listen, I'm about to go talk to Officer Perry. If your daughter, who told me earlier today she had video evidence and was about to post it on Facebook, but I'm blocked from Facebook, if you have any evidence that I can present to him that exonerates your daughter, I will do it now. Regretfully, in the time I went to the bathroom and brought the bicycle parts upstairs, BB did not have time to get back to me. Subsequently, let's see. Subsequently, I brought up the bicycle parts, all disheveled in my PJs, no bra, no socks, nothing, I had a migraine still, but I brought up proudly the bicycle parts, and I was looked at sternly, told to put them to the side, and that we needed to go outside and talk. And I said, good, because I wanted to have a cigarette. And I told Officer Perry in a note, please, I'm ill, and I don't want Mr. M to worry about me. So if you're recording this, read this silently to yourself, and when I say I was sick and in the hospital, please don't ask me why. He said, okay, I'm recording this, and we started talking. I noted that he was not really jazzed that I was giving him these bicycle parts. Then all of a sudden, I was told to put my arms behind my back, though he did kindly put them in my front because I have a broken neck and I can't extend that way for long periods of time. But he said that Mr. Myers had confessed to the crime. Mr. Myers had implicated me as the ringleader, and that I roped him into it, which is why I find myself homeless, penniless, without any of my belongings, because I was immediately, the locks were changed with no notice to me. I could hear my cat crying inside, but I couldn't get him. Couldn't grab a toothbrush. I obviously did not get paid that week. Only the clothes on my back and a few other items. Did I leave there 2.5 weeks ago? I've been living in my van. I believe that had due diligence been done by the police, I would not have lost everything. I would not be in the position that I am today. We have not even had a preliminary hearing where the evidence has been put forth, nor have I faced a grand jury yet. But I can tell you, never, ever will I recover from this. Never will my business, which is based on the most trust possible, never will it recover. Never when I'm exonerated. Even when I'm found to not even be charged. People will wonder, did I have anything to do with this? I cannot tell you the motivations or the operations of anyone else's mind. I can tell you for certain, I've never stolen a piece of bubblegum. I've never stolen from anyone. I may be beautifully flawed like many of us, but I can assure you 100%, being a liar or a thief has never been one of my downfalls. And you can take that to the bank, as Mr. Myers would say. Right, Mandy? I'm sending this to my lawyer. I'm sending this to a few people. And if anyone takes the time to look at this evidence, I think even to a lay person, it's absolutely 100% obvious I lost everything for nothing. My stuff has been thrown into the dump, and the police have confiscated my belongings that were illegally gone through and put outside. And I was told if they were not picked up by Tuesday, which was 2 days after I got kicked out unceremoniously, without a writ of possession or anything from the courts, I was tossed out, and that my belongings were being confiscated to check for stolen goods by the Port Orford police. As you will see the evidence that states there is nothing left at the house for me, and if I go there, I'll be arrested. This has got to change. The police going around saying that there's overwhelming evidence against people that are innocent, this impacted my life just as much as his, if not more. I will not recover from this. Christopher Myers, if he indeed did confess and he did do this, needs to go down. And my daughter needs to know I did not do this, and so does the victim. This was absolutely 100% avoidable. I'm without friends, without money, without food, without shelter other than my van, and I've been living in the same clothes for 2.5 weeks now. Thank you, Port Orford Police, for doing a Keystone Cop job once again. And thank you for listening and watching.